What's going on, everybody? Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing? What's going on? Welcome to the Quisha King Show. I'm your host, Quisha King Benton. And I am so happy you are here with me today. We got a lot to get into, so let me go right ahead and say hello to my co-host. Hi, Tam. Hello, hello. Hi, Megan. Good to see you guys. Welcome. One cup, two bears. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. You make sure you guys hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you have not subscribed. Please go ahead and oh my gosh, I feel like I've been so out of practice. Like, subscribe, all the things. Let's play this.
What happened that one of their be charged with such a serious offense? One girl that we spoke with knew Anthony pretty well, that she says, and told us this.
I'm in shock because it's like I wouldn't expect that from him. I only know him fighting and stuff, like, you know, but to take someone's life is just like a different level.
Because you continue to come after us.
A prominent activist who has often clashed with Dallas police over claims of brutality, Dominic Alexander, is now facing his own allegations of violence.
You telling me a grainy video is shown to jurors, but it was shown in 4K clear to the people that witnessed it? No witness on that stand had that little man's back. None, 0 out of 21 people being questioned? Come on, man, I'm done with all of that. I feel the same way about white people, the same way they feel about my people. Yeah, try one of us.
White lives don't matter?
Man, fuck white lives. How about that? I'm saying that. Because y'all want to play these games. Y'all want to play these crackhead games, so I'm going to play them. Fuck white lives. How about that? I hate white people. I like pussy. You know, hungry, crackhead, redneck pussy. That's the one I hate. Yeah, I know.
Why?
I'm holding this up. That's it. Hold this up. I'm just a guy holding this up.
You know why people are talking to you. You're acting surprised to get black and stuff with a white person. You know why they're
holding a sign.
Was it a switch? I don't know what he had.
It was like it seemed like it was a multi-tool, almost like a Swiss Army.
Like with like with the little scissors and everything and whatever. So it was small. Well, I would have argued the size of it alone, you wouldn't even think it's a deadly weapon.
And that's
forgot he had it in the bag.
If it was one of the little, like, I don't know. Like, I do think.
Well, that's why he went to his coach and was like, but I don't think I heard him that.
But what this process did is shown that black lives do not matter in Collin County. This trial showed that it put emotions over the law. After Trayvon Martin and so many countless names, it has shown us that black life is not safe in Collin County.
I forgot, and the twin brother would have been with him. Fuck it, you see.
They should have both been arrested.
They both should have been dead. The both brothers. Both of them should have been dead. You ask me? Don't record me. I ain't asked you not to record me. Like I said.
Let her talk.
This was a legal lynching that happened in here today.
We can't hear. All right.
I said, as a former prosecutor, this was a legal lynching that happened in this slaughterhouse. This is a slaughterhouse. This is not a courthouse. This courthouse is designed when you would come here and you look like us to slaughter you. That judge intentionally.
35 years for a kid who had decided to go under a tent that was not his team's tent as it was raining and simply didn't want to be put out in the rain by some random kid that he didn't know who was larger than him. Listen, a lot of people don't know what it is to live as a black person in this country, but just like you can give the benefit of the doubt to so many police officers when they go out and they shoot some black unarmed person, even though they are trained, the fact that there was little to no mercy seen or humanity seen when this black boy said that I was scared, or the fact
they just won't quit. They just will not allow right to be right and wrong to be wrong. We have a problem, and I see this problem in the quote unquote Black community. This problem of not being able to say that what a Black person does is wrong. I see this stemming from the Black church. Yes, that's how I see it. I see this stemming from the Black church. I have a quote to read for you guys. Oh, gosh. Let's see. I accidentally closed my what I was going to read to you guys. I know, listen, this is my first day back from my vacation, and I'm like all over the place. But bear with me. We're gonna get it together. There's a lot to get into, and I want to make sure that you guys hear certain things that need to be discussed. I'm sorry, you guys. 1 second. I closed the wrong tab, and so now I gotta find it again. Let's see. My apologies. Can you guys? Okay. Hi, Karen. Hello. Hey, DT. What's up, you guys? Bear with me for 1 second. Oh, gosh. I just closed it. Oh, okay. Here we go. Y'all throw some gold hearts in the chat for your girl. Please, 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 and thank you. Okay. Booker T. Washington said, I was going to have it on the from the book, but anyway, nevertheless, this is what he said. He said, quote, this is from his book, My Larger Education. This was written in 1911. Okay, 1911. It says, he said, this is Booker T. Washington, there is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. Okay, that quote is from a book by Booker T. Washington written in 1911 called My Larger Education. Okay, so what we are seeing is not new. This idea of people wanting to be victims, first of all, that's a human problem. That's a human problem. When Adam sinned, he was like, yeah, it was that woman that you gave me. It wasn't me. Okay, even though you gave me the commandment, it wasn't me. It was the woman that you gave me. Don't you know that, God? Okay, so this is an old problem. DT says, translation, the N-words have been added for a very long time. Listen, the condition of wanting to blame somebody else Everybody has. We all had that problem. The thing that has been done or done to the Black community and the Black community allowed to happen to it is these so-called preachers espousing these beliefs that do not align with the Bible, and the people hearing it not saying, wait a minute, that's not the Lord. There's no pushback on this stuff, but it's so far infiltrated into the quote unquote Black community that we have things like people like Karmelo Anthony coming out and basically thinking that they can do whatever they want to do and not suffer any consequences. So one of the other things that I wanted to say about this was Booker T. Washington. He wasn't talking about white supremacists. He was, in fact, talking about, of course, Black leaders. And he was exactly right. You know, there's a ton of these so-called ministers. You know, we got Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, which kind of started this whole Reverend Doctor being the minister and the politician, the minister and the, you know, involved so heavily in the practice of the minister being like, you know, so heavily involved in politics. You know, you have him, you have Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and Minister Dominique Alexander, who is supposedly the man that is helping Karmelo Anthony. Let's just take a listen to this foolishness.
A Texas jury found 19-year-old Karmelo Anthony guilty of murdering.
Put emotions over the law. But what this process did is shown that Black lives do not matter in Collin County. This trial showed
Black lives do not matter. So this is their spokesperson, the minister. He says he's a minister, but not a minister of the gospel. He's a minister of justice. You know, remember how Martin Luther King said, like, he was more kind of, I'm a little bit more, the gospel that I'm going to preach is the social gospel. Remember, that's what Martin Luther King was saying. This minister, he's saying he is a minister of justice, which is the same thing. It's all political. Okay. It's not really about the Bible and the Bible and God being, Jesus being your personal savior. It's not really about that. It is about just social justice. Just we're going to put some Christianese on top of it. So how do you say that you are a minister and you say that Black life is not honored, it's not respected, it doesn't mean anything in this particular county? How do you say that when it's actually a Black person who killed someone else, who got to spend an entire year going to school, he went to college, he went to, you know, he was living it up. He didn't even have to spend it behind bars. He was able to roam free while they convicted and eventually be convicted of this crime anyway. So that means that a murderer was walking around amongst in the community just out.
That it put emotions over the law. After Trayvon Martin and so many countless names, it has shown us that Black life is not safe in Collin County.
Minister Dominique Alexander is the man that you just heard from in that video. He is a spokesman for the Anthony family. Minister, it's nice to have you on. You keep saying that Black lives don't matter, but no Black lives were lost here. A 17-year-old white person was killed. So what are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is 35 years. Karmelo Anthony was sentenced to 35 years. Yet at the end of the day, Black America repeatedly is told that self-defense is a part of the law. That a knife under 5 inches is legal in the state of Texas. That stand your ground is legal here in the state of Texas. But when a Black person try to use those same basic rights and laws, then we're not afforded those things. We're doing those things unjustifiably.
Well, that's not what a jury found today. Can you tell me, I know you know Karmelo Anthony well, why did he bring a knife to a track meet?
I can't comment on that. What I can do, I can't speak for Karmelo Anthony, but I can tell you that the state of Texas made it legal. So at the end of the day, if a person got a problem with it, they might need to call Governor Greg Abbott and tell him, why does this state have open carry laws? Why does it have brass knuckles and et cetera, right?
Stabbing somebody in the heart, though, sir, is definitely not legal. He could have just turned around and walked out of that tent at any moment.
And based on what you have been told about the situation, I can see how you can take that fact. But the levels of injustice that was done in this trial is not how I was told, right? But at the end of the day, that's the reason why we're going to go through a full appeals process to ensure that the facts are being told correctly. But me and you are going to go back and forth.
No, that's fine. Tell me, I'm curious. Tell me tell me what you think happened.
Well, what I think is the situation is that someone asked Karmelo Anthony to come over there. He knew an individual, but that's not being told, right? It's like, oh, a kid just randomly went under a tent, right? And he just sitting there. No one knows who he is. That's not the case, right? We know that.
It's also irrelevant. It is irrelevant if he knew somebody. It's irrelevant if it is irrelevant. Because Karmelo Anthony, one, has been told his whole entire life that he doesn't have to be responsible for his conduct. Why would I say make such a claim like that? We'll get back to him in just a second. I want to show you this little piece. This is why I say Karmelo has, he thinks he can get away with whatever. Hold on one second. Let me. This right here is why I say that he has gone about his life doing whatever he wants to do for a very long time.
Here at Centennial, students shocked about what happened, that one of their classmates could be charged with such a serious offense. One girl that we spoke with knew Anthony pretty well, that she says, and told us this.
I'm in shock because it's like, I wouldn't expect that from him. I only know him fighting and stuff, but to take someone's life is just like a different level.
I only know him fighting and stuff. I covered this when it first happened, like a year ago or whatever. And they have restorative justice in Texas. And this girl, he's known for fighting and stuff, starting fights and stuff. I just want to refresh everybody's memory about Karmelo, because of course, the people who are either being paid, the race hustlers, the grievance hustlers, the victims, the cultural victims, they don't seem to understand that this boy has been doing this kind of stuff and getting away with it seemingly for a long time. Why are you getting in fights? There was already a school record on him that the school fought very, very hard to keep away from the public. And, they were talking about why wouldn't he go on trial? And I would say that the reason why, why wouldn't he take the stand? And I I believe that the reason why Karmelo Anthony would not take the stand is because they knew that he would be, his background would be looked into. Because if your plea is self-defense, you mean to tell me you can't get on the stand and defend yourself? You can't get on the stand to defend yourself, but your plea is self-defense? What kind of sense does that make? You didn't want to get on the stand because you knew your background would come into question, and then your credibility, the little bit that you had left of it. For us sane people, I mean, we didn't. You first of all, no, there was no credibility for you to. We already knew what happened. But for the people who had a little bit of credibility to spared for you, that would have been lost for the sane people, because even with that, people would not. They're not all sane. But this young lady, she's like, yeah, I know him from fights and stuff, but this is too far. This is who this young man was becoming. Okay? This was not some innocent, I just want to stay dry from the tent. But the reason why do we keep seeing, which is the main point of my video, Black identity, it kills. Black, quote unquote, Black identity, not pigment Black, ideology Black. It kills you. And this identity is growing out from, being pushed out from the quote unquote Black church. All these so-called ministers running around here who are willing to sell you out for $1. They are playing on your emotional tie to your skin color. Let me read some of these. Somebody said, let's see. William says, hi, William. He says, Booker T lived in a different era. It would have been more difficult to determine the race hustlers from them with genuine complaints at that time that had something to say. I totally disagree. I completely disagree. I think it would have been easier for them to recognize the people with legitimate complaints and other people who was just, not legit. Because especially, there was fewer Black people back then. There was, there was something that they were striving towards. It wasn't just like, oh, woe is me. There were people that were actually trying to build things. There was a time when Black people understood that it was good to build things. There was a time when Black people understood that it was good to strive for things in America, that they knew that they could do something in this country, even coming out of slavery. They knew that. So I would disagree with you, William, on that one. I think that they would know who is who, especially in your neighborhood. Even today, what's up with the people around you. The people that if they ever get arrested, you're like, well, yeah, they had it coming. And you also know the people like, something's not right with that. We're capable of assessing these types of things if we are honest about reality. So I disagree with that, William. DT says Karmelo's attorneys have already filed an appeal, and you can best believe they're going to make sure they get the case in front of the less. Well, they possibly they might. Uncle Tom talks. Hey. He says the guy shook a baby until it got brain damage. They should have never hired that guy. They never should have hired this guy. And this is why I'm as firm on this as I am, because his parents are the ones who hired the race hustler. His parents are the ones who were hell bent on making this thing about race from the jump. So this boy, young man, His whole identity, his whole life has been about blaming other people for what he's doing. How can I cause chaos and then, just get away with it? This is from Blackness. This is from the Black identity. If you disagree with me, click the link and come on up and we can discuss. Let's see. Hey, Megan. Megan says it wasn't Austin's fault that Karmelo was emotionally remedial and couldn't handle himself without resorting to violence with a weapon. It certainly was not Austin's fault to think that, two teenagers who are like, okay, listen, you're under our tent, we don't want you, you're not on our team, so you ain't got a business being over here. Even as a cheerleader, you don't go and sit on, we would never have went and sat on somebody else's bench, even as cheerleaders. So miss me with this whole, it's just a tent. We wouldn't even do that on the cheerleading squad. We wouldn't do it on the dance team. We would never have done that. So miss me with this idea that, oh, he was just trying to get out of, what's wrong with sitting under another team's tent? No, this boy, young man, Karmelo Anthony, did not know how to control his emotions and was not taught that his actions have consequences. Why? Because he's Black. Where does this all come from? Where does this all come from? Where do most Black people get their politics? Where do most Black people get their, the Black church is where all of this stuff is centered around, especially back in the day. That's why Margaret Sanger was like, yeah, we'll just go into the Black community. It's all good. We'll just go into the Black church and we can weasel our way. We'll just cut them some checks and, we'll be right on in there. Yamara, hello. She says, I would have kept my kids from any school or event if I knew weapons were on board. Thank you. Who's sending their kid to the track meet with the homeboy up the block who thinks he lives in freaking Beirut? You don't want a society like that. You don't want to live in a society where you can't, go to a track meet and not expect for, I don't know, the kids to get stabbed. You think we live in a civilized society. Exactly, Karen. The family was race hustling. That's why they got Dominique. That's the first thing, because I'm telling you this because y'all can go back on my channel. I did a lot of Karmelo coverage when this first came out because it was, the restorative justice stuff, hearing about, all of this concealing of his what do you call it? Like his history at school, the violence and all his records, concealing his records, considering that he was turning 18 and all of this kind of stuff. Why would you conceal that? The boy is a murderer. He's, at least at that point, had been allegedly, it wasn't even alleged. He said he did it. He's like, I'm not alleged. I did it. It was crazy. Javi3 says, sometimes I wonder, are people this stupid or acting stupid? Sorry, but have no other way to explain what I am seeing. It's both. It is, people are really that stupid and some people are acting stupid. Like the Dominique, the minister, the reverend, they're acting. The lay people, they're serious. They are really clueless. They really don't know. Exactly, DT. You don't want to live in a society where a push should justify a stabbing that takes someone's life. A push. But let's be all the way real. Even if there will never be a point where the Blacks think that a Black person is justified or is not justified for causing harm. Because remember, Trayvon Martin, he was on top of George Zimmerman, ground and pound. Remember that? And why did you have to shoot him? He didn't do anything wrong. He was just on top of you, beating your head into the pavement, ground and pounding you. I mean, like, what's wrong with that? You know? Shouldn't you just take it? Karen says, I'm in the Dallas area. Dominique been raised hustling a long time and has a long criminal record also. Has a long criminal record also. All right, so I want to show you guys this paper. It says the concept of blackness in theories of race. Oh, yes, this is a goodie. All right. Again, if you think that Black identity, blackness is not in the Black church, I'm talking about the ideology. Come up and let's debate this topic. Black identity, the idea that your skin color holds some kind of weight and that you don't have to bear the consequences. If you disagree, let's discuss. All right, I want to read this to you. Oops. All right, let's see. We're gonna go all the way down to the end where it says this. All right. What is here? Let me put it like this. What is the Black race? Okay. Actually, this is, like I said, the concept of blackness in theories of race by Milan, whoever this person is the faculty of social and economic scientists at Comenius University. Okay. So let's look. This person wrote, what is the Black race? As might be obvious from what has been written in this study, the concept of race has a far more important scope than just variety of color. Remember, we have been talking about this. It's not just your pigment, all right? The American theologian, here we go, J. Cameron Carter, emphasizes that, quote, it should already be clear by now, but it is nevertheless worth saying explicitly that white and race and even Black are not merely signifiers of pigmentation. In other words, their referent is perhaps only secondary to color. Rather, they signify, check it out, here it is, a political economy and or a social arrangement. This was an invention of the Black race as something considered inferior to the whole story of Western civilization, which had discovered whiteness not only as color, but as a regime of political and economic power. This power could be and was later used by Western civilization for enslavement. Western civilization used race in order to create a single great collective story into which Black skin did not belong. The final transformation of the race into its scientific form occurred in the, okay, anyway, that's whatever. But here it is, right here. No pun intended, in black and white. It's right here. It should already be clear by now, but it is nevertheless worth saying explicitly that white and race and even black are not merely signifiers of pigmentation. So, what does that mean? What does that mean? If being black is not merely a signifier of your pigment, then it is an ideology. And if it's an ideology, where do we see this ideology play out? Who are the people that promote this ideology of a political and economic power structure? We see this in the Black church. Now, Tam says that Karmelo Anthony, wait, hold on. Let me see. I'm backing up. Tam says his mom failed him his whole life. I think she meant his whole life. And when he needed her the most, she failed and hustled $600,000 in his name. His mom didn't care about him at all. Let's see. I guess that is his stepmom. And she says, no, it's his real mother. The dad was his stepdad because his real dad is in jail. Karmelo isn't even from Texas. He was from LA originally. Oh, really? That's interesting. Because, it seems like they're really trying to force a protest. But it doesn't seem like it's like really kicking off that well. Annoyed Clover JM7BD says, you are nowhere near as intelligent as you think. This sounds like full propaganda BS. Again, that little S head, kill that boy, not your weirdo perception. I don't even know what that means. Yeah, what are you talking about? Like, what do you, I'm not even going to respond because I don't know what you're saying. Are you saying that I don't agree that Karmelo killed him? Yes, I do. I believe that. I don't know. I mean, what do you say? Oh, Louisiana. Sorry. He's originally from Louisiana, not Cali. My bad. So here, Gergs Bain says, so here is one of my issues with it. Supporters use the should not have put hands on him as justification. Worse happens to me for just going to the gas station. I mean, that's no justification. It's not that's for anybody who's saying, well, he shouldn't have put his hands on him. And I've seen people say that, if you put your hands on me, that means I can kill you. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is not justice. Could you imagine? Because I have seen some people that, are saying, well, if you put your hands on me in any kind of way, then I have the right to whip out a lethal weapon and stab you to death. That's absolutely crazy. Because that is insane. Gergsbane says, being physically blocked, requested for money, touched, being met with hostility when saying no to their request for money. Seriously. That's yeah, I mean, that's unacceptable. Imagine if Gergsbane is just like, somebody's physically blocked, pow, or stab somebody, can I get some money? You tap on the shoulder, stab. Are you kidding me? Like, what kind of society is that? That is ridiculous. Who we are, 1948. What's up? They are trying hard to force that Black Hope protest. They trying real hard, but I don't think it's going to work. We are certainly praying against it. But this is what they do. And it's like, how many times do they do this? Can they do this and just get away with it? But I want us to move beyond just the protests and this whole like, did he do it? Did he not do it? All of those things. He's convicted. Praise God. He's going to jail. The problem, though, is where does this come from? I don't think enough people understand that there is a reason why every time one of these protests and all this stuff pops off, there's some reverend, doctor, minister from the Black church around the corner. There's some minister who is not really a minister of the gospel. They are a minister of justice, like Dominique calls himself. Undisco Kid says, so what am I justified in doing when my wife blocks the doorway? Well, the Bible says that the marriage bed is undefiled, so y'all do what y'all do. Let's see. Gergsbane says, now, if he tried to flee and was chased, and that was the only option to cease the hostility, that would be self-defense. But that standard was clearly not met. Yeah. Even if Austin said, if you don't get out of here, I'm gonna shank you. I'm gonna hurt you. I'm going to do. He was like, I'm not trying to fight you. The guy, you have to try to prevent, the death. That's like written into our law. You have to be trying to prevent the death. There should be some restraint. Moonlight says, who we are in 1948 says, when I was coming, you got to change your name. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not telling you to change your name, but who we are. Now I'm going to call you who we are. When I was coming up, that's when kids and teens started using weapons instead of fists. I'm more of a put them dukes up my guy myself, but it shows just how weak Black boys are. True. Yamara says, will Jesus be looking at skin color when he judges us? No, he will not. We talk about that a lot on this channel. You guys, please make sure to share this video out so we can get this pushed out to more people. Yes, Karen, Reverend Doctor. They all are Reverend Doctors. That's what they are. Sorry, y'all. My allergies are really acting a whole donkey right now. Oh gosh, Tam says, yesterday we had protests outside my store that I'm a major at. It got wild. They came into my store acting like fools, and 8 cops had to come and were arresting people inside my store over all this. Oh my gosh, insane. Gergsbane said, I don't know. I'm in my 40s and raised in a rural area. We all had guns in our cars and even had marksman classes. We also all had knives on our person. Nobody got stabbed or killed. Yeah, because we were more civilized. We didn't have all this restorative justice. We didn't have all this social justice, as where you could just get away with a lot of this stuff. We didn't have Obama. That, like when we were growing up, that was before Barack Obama. Before Barack Obama made everything about race. Because he's a Marxist, he's doing what he did what the Marxists wanted to do. Push that wedge, into the Black community and further agitate that wedge. And that is what is happening. All right. So I want to play this for you. Now, I was completely and utterly disgusted when I heard this. And I want to stress to you, this whole Black identity is not just for Black people. Black identity, you don't have to be Black to promote Black identity. I know that sounds crazy. It's just like you don't have to be white to promote, how they say, to be a white supremacist, because it's an ideology. They're not talking about your skin color. Most of the time it matches, but sometimes it doesn't. Listen to this absolutely disgusting content.
Welcome back to our continuing.
So these so-called experts and attorneys are waiting for the verdict to come in. So this is on Court TV. Hold on to your skivvies because this is shocking.
How important is it for that jury and for the defense to have? That is our Cody Thomas sending notes to us because, again, if you're just joining us, there are no cameras allowed in this inside the courthouse as people have gathered.
So they just found out.
Again, if you're just joining us, Karmelo Anthony has been found guilty of murder, the top charge in this case, after just 3 hours of deliberation. Sonny, but besides wow, which a lot of us are feeling, thoughts?
I was not expecting the top charge. I really was thinking that they would see manslaughter, still guilty, but manslaughter, different sentencing, but guilty of murder. So, that's heavy.
Wow.
And I hope everyone just, it does not seem like everyone's going to be calm. It seems like we're going to have a problem there.
Wow. This is dumb.
You can see the.
This is dumb.
This is dumb.
What is dumb, Michael?
I'm sorry, Ted. This is just dumb. This is stupid. I can't believe that this jury came back in 3 hours with guilty. I'm totally stunned. On top of that, this judge as well, not letting cameras in the courtroom. I mean, good job. Good job, Your Honor. Really, really, really good job. You handled it really, really well. You have this community that's about to get lit on fire. You don't allow cameras to go into a courtroom. The community already believes that this kid is being railroaded. And then look at what happened. Your jury came back within 3 hours for a guilty verdict for a kid who used a 4-inch knife one time, didn't use it multiple times. Was it wrong? Yes. But was it murder, like beyond a reasonable doubt? No. And was it murder beyond a reasonable doubt within 3 hours? Absolutely not. This is insane. This is dumb.
Cody.
I am sick of these people. I find it completely and utterly disgusting. These are supposed to be attorneys. There is no regard for Austin, his family, the actual victim. The actual victim. I work with I work with a local organization here called the Justice Coalition. And so what it is it's an organization that when they can't find the murderers, the kidnappers of kids, they get together and we do like special events for them, but a lot of them are the parents that are involved in the organization. And so they work closely with the police department to try to, close these cases. But what they do is they put on events for the families. It's a support. It's just to offer support. And one of the women who've been involved when her daughter was murdered, and she said, why, I never thought about this, but she was like, why do we call it the criminal justice? Because it's only seemed, what about the victim's justice? And I was like, gosh, that is so good. Why are we need to have a victim focused judicial system, not a criminal judicial. So, I know it's just like the phrasing and I get the whole thing, but when you hear attorneys and experts talk like this with no regard for the victim, it really makes you think about why we have a criminal justice instead of victim justice.
Thomas saying that there are tears on Karmelo's side of the courtroom, and they're going into the penalty phase immediately. So this, no one is leaving the courtroom. They're going to now go into the penalty phase. There's a huge, Karmelo Anthony is a young man. He is now 19. And the sentencing for the top charge, in a lot of states, you're found.
I'm sorry. Berg's Apple says, this is insane. She's acting like Black people called themselves Black. Black people do call themselves Black. Before, Black people were just Negroes. Then it was colored people. Then it was African Americans and Black. Black people came up with, well, actually not really, but the Black people on the leftist Black people supported being called Black. You ever heard of the Black Power movement? Huh? You never heard of that? What is insane is that you don't know this, that you think that it was the white people calling Blacks Black. It wasn't. And it certainly wasn't from racism. They used Black to cause a wedge as a wedge issue in the Black community.
Guilty of murder, you're going away, sometimes for life, life without, or at least 25 to life before you're eligible. Texas is different. The range of sentencing here is 5 years to life in prison. So the decision making now, and we'll wait till Cody updates us whether the jury is going to stay and do the sentencing or if it'll be the judge. Boy, Michael, if I'm the defense, I'm getting that jury as far away from this courthouse as possible.
Yeah, 100%, 1,000%. I'm not letting this jury touch. I mean, I'm questioning the jury. I'm asking them, how did you reach your verdict? How did you reach it so quickly? What happened here? It was a 4-inch knife. He used it one time. He was pushed. I'm not saying that it was right, but what are you doing? How did you get this verdict? I'd want to know. My whole identity as a defense attorney would be in question, right? I'm questioning my identity right now, and I have nothing to do with this case. How could you come back like that? I would be enraged. I'm enraged right now. This is very upsetting. And then on top of it, to compound it, this dumb judge didn't allow cameras in the courtroom. What was your wisdom? What were you thinking? How you put on a robe? Are you that much of an imbecile that you won't let cameras in the courtroom in a case like this? This is not a rape case. This is something different. This is something that's clearly the whole community is enraged. And you knew that before the trial started. So, I mean, this is very upsetting.
You can see the reaction. The crowd outside, of course, has received the news that Karmelo Anthony has been found guilty of the top charge of murder. And now inside the courtroom, they are moving to the penalty phase. At this point...
Also trying to get some mitigation witnesses ready. He's a good kid, Judge. This was a mistake. We're remorseful. He admitted it as soon as the police stopped him. You have to pivot as a defense attorney and move on to the next phase. The verdict is in.
Yeah. Cody Thomas saying that there's lots of crying in the courtroom as everybody absorbs this on Karmelo's side. Also, on the Metcalf side, tears.
This is sickening. The commentators are not even, they don't even have clear eyes on this case. How are we supposed to be a society of true justice, biblical justice, if the whole law, if the whole system is corrupt? Let's see. Somebody said, when did black people, how was it black people that called themselves black? Who said that? Oh God, the bottom line. Didn't I tell you not to come back over here? Isn't that you? For those of you who don't know, blackness, being called black, was started primarily by Stokely Carmichael and with the Black Power movement. Like I said, he was black. If you have some other evidence of black people not being calling themselves black people and and them pushing it out, let's see the evidence. Otherwise, zip it and get the heck up out of here. Hey Paul, what's going on? Hey We Watch, how are you? Let's see. Les Bivens says, because black people choose not to believe the word of God is what's wrong with the world. The enemy will never show anyone the end result of what he wants them to do. Repent and turn to Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. You chose the victim narrative. You know, blacks and many people have chosen the victim narrative, and they have chosen to go against the word of God. Not more than a conqueror, they want to be oppressed. They want to be chained to that. They want to stay enslaved. They want to stay bound to the sin of. They want to stay bound to their sin. Brethren Lee says, what Karmelo did is murder, but America is one big hypocrite. Okay, so are you. So are you. You're a hypocrite too. You're a hypocrite. How are you going to say America's one big hypocrite? How is America? You mean people are hypocrites? Yes, you're correct. People are hypocrites. I mean, that's not new information. People are hypocrites. People are murderers. People are liars, gossip. People do all kinds of things. All kinds of things. To say America is a hypocrite, what does that even mean? Exactly, Yamar. Mind-blowing things out of proportion. The whole community. No, it's a few. This is why I don't associate myself with these people. Okay, I don't associate myself when they say our this and our that, talking about black people as a collective. I'm not in your collective group. I am not in your black collective group, okay? I don't believe in the ideology of blackness. I am free indeed through Jesus Christ. I reject anybody trying to lump me in their collective grievance, collective community. I don't know them people. That they're not in my community, and they're certainly not in the body of Christ. DT says that's how biased our news agencies are, Quisha. They are all owned and operated by the left, namely the Democrat Party. That's a fact. Let's see. What the freak is this supposed to mean? A white racist is already a murderer? Let's see what does 1 John 3:15 say, since you want to you know. Let's see what this says. I really hope that you're not trying to misuse the Bible. I know you are. And this might just get you blocked. Might just get you blocked. 1 John 3:15. This man says a white racist is already a murderer and put a scripture behind it. Now, the scripture that they put, everyone who hates his brother is a murderer. And you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. So what this person who is claiming the name of Christ is trying to say, that white people, just by the sheer how God made them, by God's creation of them being white, that makes them a murderer. You're blocked. Don't ever come by here again. You're a disgusting human being. Goodbye. He's blocked. Brethren Lee is blocked. Okay, so that is too far. You don't lie and then put a scripture on the lie, especially with something so egregious as saying, like, oh, because you're black or you're white, and then you're already then you're somehow a murderer. That's disgusting. To help me get through this, it's my good friend Chuck has just joined the stream. What's up, friend? What's going on?
Hey, what's going on? Glad to see you back.
Thank you. I'm getting back in the groove.
Yeah. I just did my first live with Chad, and man, it's been a long time. He and I did a live stream. I don't know if you had a chance to check it out. I'm just plugging it shamelessly.
Yeah, no, I did catch some of it. Good stuff. I didn't get to watch all of it, but yeah, it was the you still haven't reset your phone though, I see.
What's funny is, well, I don't know, when I went live with Chad, I don't know, I think it was a little different. So I don't know. It sounded okay when I was on with Chad. So I don't know.
You know what? When I play you back, I can hear you. When we're on here is when I can't hear you. So I don't know what it is. When I play it back, it sounds fine. So I'm gonna just turn you up in my speaker, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we we did a about 2 hours and a little change, talking about the MLK project, the final episode. Like I said, it's not an episode. It's a feature length documentary.
Yeah.
By itself, I mean, it is amazing. It is amazing. So we covered a lot of material that we put out in that piece. So that was cool.
Yeah.
But
I'll make sure to link it below. But it's the last episode, right?
Yep. The last episode of the MLK Project, episode 11 of season 2. Did like a series finale kind of wrap up deal. I hopefully, leave it up to Chad. I mean, who knows exactly what he has going on, but I want to get back with him and finish talking about episode 11, because there's a lot more to cover, and it connects directly to the topic on hand tonight, with this with this case. I don't even know excuse me, where you want me to begin necessarily, but there's a quote here, Quisha, that comes to mind, because what Blacks have become, I mean, it is just, I mean, I can't think of a word or words that adequately explains what I'm seeing. I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. I've said this time and time again that a lot of folks are, especially if you haven't been around, Black spaces, insert whatever fanciful academic term you want to use here. If you haven't been around Black folks, you haven't been raised around them, you haven't been in or around institutions where they are predominant, then you really don't know the level of 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 evil that exists there. You really don't know. I mean, even our I hate to use these racialist terms or to use race terms, but for the sake of trying to get a point across, I guess I don't have a choice. But to my white conservative counterparts who, you think that, I kind of know, I get the lay of the land. I know how things go, and you believe that you have right on your side, and so you're speaking out and you're saying the quiet part out loud. You're saying the things that need to be said, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and I agree, and I align with most of my quote unquote white conservative counterparts on a lot of issues. But man, oh man, I tell you, even my white conservatives, they have no idea the tinderbox that you're sitting on, because Blacks have been, for the greater part of 70, 80 years, maybe even longer, they have just been just engulfed, just with so much propaganda, so many lies,
Yeah.
so many. I mean, it is like they live in a totally separate reality from you.
True.
I'm dead serious. They don't know how anything works. They don't know anything about the world.
Nope.
The only thing that they know is that they are victims of oppression, and that the proverbial straw man white man is ... And so this is what you're seeing in response to this. You're probably saying to yourself, how can these people be so morally screwed up?
Bankrupt. Yeah.
How are they so morally bankrupt? And that's a conversation, of course, that is worth having, because
Mm-hmm.
we're going to solve it. Of course, the short answer to that question is that they have to revert back to God. But this is why Quisha felt it was so important to begin to do these live streams, is because even when it comes to Black folks, on average, the common or average conception of what God is and who God is and what God wants, what God teaches, and what God believes is not the true and living God.
That's
Right?
so many people really don't understand just the basics of who Jesus is and why he had to come. People don't understand why Jesus had to die for your sins. They know that he died. Okay, well, I know he came, he died for my sins, he rose on the third day, but they don't know why he had to do it. Because when you understand the why he had to do it, then you start to look at yourself and you don't make stupid comments like, oh, white people, because they, white people did something, that all white people did the thing that whatever, you're putting them in this collective group. That's the whole bag. That's like the whole the collective. Because that's why that is so important for them to believe that you can just be put in a group. Because once you're in the group, there's no personal salvation.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy said in the book, J.P. Foster, the Reverend Dr. J.P. Foster, don't let anybody tell you that salvation is just for is personal.
Right.
What?
Exactly. And
sorry. Anyway,
no, you're absolutely right, and that's why I like the piece that you read from another one of these charlatan crackpot academics talking about race and this and that. Is interesting when you hear a lot of these folks. A lot of these clips have gone viral. A lot of people are reacting to a lot of these same clips, or a lot of the loudest individuals, particularly like outside the courthouse and so on. And one of the main gripes you hear constantly from a lot of these Black supremacists and anti-white bigots, this is what they are, is they're complaining about how the jury was all white, which is, of course, is not true. The jury was not all white. Okay, even here, they're talking about Karmelo Anthony was shoved. He was not shoved. Multiple witnesses attested to the fact, or testified to the fact under oath, in front of a courtroom, that he was not shoved, said Austin Metcalf, sort of gently placed his hands upon him so as to escort him in the direction away from the tent. Now, again, we can, because I don't know, I guess I do sort of want to get into the particulars of what actually took place. When this story first broke, I knew exactly what happened. I knew exactly what happened.
Yes, I mean,
I say, people say, well, wait till the trial, wait till all the facts come out. Let me tell you something. I'm not walking around and acting. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the toughest guy, because I am far from that. Okay. But I have done some things in my life that I am not proud of. A lot of things that I cannot talk about because I don't know if the statute of limitations have run out. Okay?
Oh, we just gonna leave that alone then, right?
I will leave it at that.
Okay.
And it is by the grace of God, Quisha, that I am still alive today.
Amen.
I was a young man, and at times I was very confrontational. I had a quick fuse. I had a smart mouth. I've been in, I wasn't fighting constantly, but I was kind of like one of your run-of-the-mill urban kids that they say, quote unquote, rough around the edges. I said this on a podcast some years ago when I was being interviewed by a friend of mine. I said that I had reached a point in my life where I just didn't care. And I said the only thing that saved me from going over the edge was knowing that if I were to die on these streets, or if I were to get arrested and lose a great chunk of my life to the state, languishing away in someone's penitentiary, it would have severely hurt my parents. Because there was a time in my life when my parents cared more about my life than I cared about my own. That's the only thing that saved me. I knew my mother and my father wanted to see me make something of myself. And so I've been there, I've been that, what you gonna do? You can't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
What? Who? What? Touch me? And everybody knows. I mean, for crying out loud, it was a, it was ha ha ha, it was key, and people was, keeled over, belly laughing when Cedric the Entertainer made a joke about it during the Kings of Comedy film when he talked about black folks living by a different creed. We live by the wish creed.
The wish.
We wish a mother would be.
Hello.
Most black folk walk around that wish mentality, because most black folk, particularly young black men, but young black women too, they walk around looking for problems. They go around looking for trouble, and don't happen to be someone who is of a different race. Oh my goodness. Oh, they definitely gonna flex on you then, because first of all, they think that you're gonna back down simply when they start barking. Because
especially if you're white.
Right, because you're supposed to be afraid of them. Black folks, we just built differently. We're just tough. We're just tough by nature. Because we come from the hood, we come from the ghetto, we come from the streets, and such and so forth. And so the moment I start getting beside myself, everybody's supposed to kowtow around me, because I have been, or I assume that I am, for whatever reason, tougher than you. But not only that, I think that I have the imprimatur to be belligerent because I have a political excuse. I have a cultural excuse. I have a social excuse. And those excuses have been drilled into my head by the activist class and the intelligentsia and the politicians that represent me, who have convinced me that it is not my fault, of course. It is the fault of those individuals over there. Quisha, I'm gonna read a quote to you here. Yes. Because this is what happened to Black. And this is why I'm so glad a couple of shows ago, you read a large chunk of John Reed's speech before the Congress, before the Congress of the Communist International in 1920 or 1921. Yep. 1921 on the Negro question, right? Because the Black folks have become a remnant of the Soviet bloc here in this country, right? And their antics and the way they, carry themselves in this country is exacerbated for the purpose of disabling society and disabling the state so that it cannot secure the rights of the citizenry.
Demoralizing.
It is that's the point of it, is to demoralize the nation, and this is interesting because this is where the liberal experiment falls victim to its own hubris, because it is to the extent that the so-called minority can achieve on par with its white counterparts speaks to how well the promise of liberalism actually works. And so that's why there's so much catering to the minority. It's so much catering to the dysfunctional, because how well the liberal experiment works is going to be determined by how well the society, how good of a job the society does with guaranteeing the not so much the rights of all individuals or all individual groups, but it is to what extent individuals from within those separate groups get the things that they want. But they completely discount behavior in the individual choices that people make. And they're able to take Black people and prey on their sense of estrangement so as to use them for their own vanity projects. And I'm talking about, your moral and intellectual betters who believe that it is their duty and their responsibility to guide society towards its ultimate fulfillment. So, this is the problem. This is where the whole no idea of Black folks and the Black identity, like you talk about, Keisha, this is where this comes from. Let me just hit you with a quote, and I'll let you chime back in here, because I think it's important too, because we're talking about a legal matter, to kind of speak on critical legal studies. A scholar by the name of Derek Bell. I think it's important to get into him, but I want to read a quote. This is a quote from Martin Latsis. For those of you, Martin Latsis, he was a Latvian communist. He was a member of the Latvian Communist Party. And here's a quote from his, and this tells you exactly. So why are these people reacting like this? And they're going on and talking about this is nothing. Before I read the quote, people are saying, well, we need more Black people on the jury, right? This is one of the planks of the Black Panther Party program. This is where, the Black Panthers, one of the things they wanted, they had a 10-point program, and one of their demands within this 10-point plank program that the Black Panther Party had was they wanted all Black prisoners incarcerated in federal prisons, state prisons, and county jails. They wanted all Black prisoners released, because not one Black prisoner has had a fair trial, because the Constitution states that a person is to be tried by a jury of their peers. And because all of these Black prisoners were not tried by exclusively Black juries, they have all been unconstitutionally imprisoned. Now, you think that's a good idea? Just let them, okay, fine, let them go, right? But this goes to show you, okay, so you mean to tell me, Keisha, if they're Black, now you were looking at the facts of the case objectively, but when a Black person looks at the facts of the case, you're telling me that because they're Black, they're going to see something differently.
Yes, that is one of my biggest problems with this thing. It's interesting that they feel so, it's like, why do they feel so confident about that? Like, why would you think that? Is it that you've done so well indoctrinating the Blacks that when they get up in there that they're gonna do what you have programmed them to do? They're gonna go into bot mode.
Right, because that's because the law is not about facts. The law is about narrative, and that's what we'll pivot into Derek Bell if you want to at some point. But I just want to read this quote by Martin Latsis. Again, he was a communist, he was a member of the Latvian Communist Party. Here's a famous quote of his. He says, quote, "First, you must ask him to what class he belongs, what his social origin is, his education and profession. These are the questions that must determine the fate of the accused. That is the meaning of red terror." This is the meaning of the Black-led red terror here in the United States. Asking to what class he belongs, or substitute the word class for race. Ask him to what race he belongs, what are his social origins, his education, and his profession. These are the questions we must ask to determine the fate of the accused. not whether or not they're guilty,
Right.
but to what class they belong.
What class? Because Blackness is now a class.
Yes.
It's a permanent oppressed class.
Absolutely.
Because in their minds, America, I started to I think I finally I've been listening to Robin DiAngelo. I know. Because I'm trying to understand, like,
you have to.
I don't understand what, okay, they think white is the norm because it just, I'm just trying to understand. But I think I'm getting closer to how they think, because they believe that, so skin color is an ideology. It's an ideology for them. Therefore, because this is stupid. It's honestly stupid, but I think I got it. Because the people, like, let's just say the founding fathers, because they wore a certain skin color, even though they did not have this revolutionary whiteness idea, like that wasn't a thing for them.
No.
But so it's like they're applying this later phenomenon to older people. So they're like, oh, you're white, so you had this ideology because you're white, and therefore everything that you created, what you wrote, what you thought, became it's from the minds of whiteness. So therefore everything is racist, because in their mind it came from what created the norm was from the whiteness. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And whiteness as a form of bourgeois property,
right? And so it's like, since that's how you can get that America is intrinsically racist, it doesn't matter what you do. Like, that's critical race theory, right? Everything America is intrinsically racist, is woven into the fabric of the country, into the law, into the into all the institutions. It's almost it's like this end all be all thing. It's like a god. It's like a god that once it's deployed, it's like a virus, more so, that once it's deployed, it's going to go and take over all the minds of the people. And so you don't merely just you don't just, let's just say you like private property, and you like the free speech, you like classical liberalism. They're like, no, you're practicing whiteness. You can't, because you can't merely just agree, because that agreement says, oh, you're white too.
Yeah.
You white too. And so you have to, you can't, you're no longer allowed the freedom to just think. That's why I said earlier, it keeps you bound, it keeps you in bondage. But anyway, go ahead.
Right.
But I think I got it.
Yeah, and you said someone made a comment. I don't know if you were playing a clip or were from that essay or book or whatever it was you were reading. But again, someone made the comment that applying our modern day working definition to pre-19th century Europeans, and that's just factually incorrect. Like I said on the last live stream, breaking human beings into racial categories for the purpose of trying to gain some kind of scientific understanding, and by science, of course, I mean the terms and the way in which we would describe things would be, of course, offensive and politically incorrect by today's standards, but of course, especially according to someone on the left. But breaking human beings up into racial categories wasn't this kind of polemic. It wasn't black and white, because there were different types of Europeans as well. And when you look at the scholarship and the assumptions of those 19th century, early 20th century progressives, they did not believe that all Europeans were equal. As a matter of fact, it's funny because you mentioned this, and I have this here. This is a quote from Francis A. Walker. He was an American economist by the name of Francis A. Walker, was a very prominent scholar for his time. Speaking of Jews and Eastern and Southern Europeans, he said of them, they are, quote, beaten men from beaten races, a foul and stagnant pool of population in Europe, originating in places where no breath of intellectual life has stirred for ages. Edward A. Ross, he was the so-called founder of American sociology, one of the first famous American sociologists, said of Eastern Europeans, quote, Eastern European immigrants are, quote, ox-like men, descendants of backward people whose very physical appearance proclaims inferiority of type. So understand that during this time that they believe that what they call the quote unquote Nordic European, the Northern European or the Western European was superior to the Southern or Eastern European, and they thought it was genetically based. And these were white academics. Now, it's important to consider this when you look at the fact that, of course, Southern Europe is where we get much of the high culture that we enjoy today, because there was a time when Western Europe and Northern Europe was backward, and Southern Europe and Eastern Europe was flourishing. Of course, Eastern Europe was flourishing up until it was conquered by Muslim invasion in the middle of the 15th century. And so we know this to be untrue. But you had these academics at the time that were saying that not all white people were equal because some were lower than others. There were two types of Europeans. And they may have been more, but these are the two that I think off my head. But at the highest tip of the evolutionary rung were the quote unquote Nordic Europeans. The inferior Europeans was something that they called Alpine Europeans. This is a term you don't hear it quite often today, but you can look it up. Alpine, Alpine. So again, white folks thought other white folks were inferior to other white people. Okay.
Thomas Sowell talks about this too, that in Malaysia, there was like certain Malaysians that didn't like other. I mean, this happens everywhere. We talked about this before, like on Clueless, when Cher was like, she called her housekeeper a Mexican. And she was like, I'm not that Mexican, and she threw that she was out of there, because it matters to people, because just because we might share in the same skin color, subjectively, that doesn't mean that we believe the same things. And everybody has a right, whether black, white, or whatever, to have individual thought. You are not going to bind me to your ridiculous, I'm oppressed because I happen to be black. Man, screw that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I'm so pissed about this whole, like, we got to be all in the group. Oh, like the man said, like the attorney. Oh, look at they know that the community is already upset. Who? Maybe the community is actually happy that a killer is not on the loose for a whole freaking year like he was.
That's right.
Oh my God.
And so let me see, before we pivot back to this case, let me just
sorry.
No, you go, you cooking. I ain't mad at you. Now listen. But what really grinds my gears is when they talk about racism and they placed it in the context of slavery, or even they placed it in the context of pre-Columbian, pre-Columbus America. The idea that, for example, and this is something that you'll hear, I think your boy, what's the name? What's the guy we was getting down with? Bottom Line, and some of the people probably in the comment section right now are of this belief that slavery built the wealth of America, that slavery built the wealth of the West, and this is not true at all. And this is why the eugenicists had this bogus idea that that Eastern and Southern Europeans were inferior, because Western Europe, by the beginning of the 1500, by about 1500, shortly after Columbus, if you look at the wealth of Western Europe from about 1000 AD to 1500 AD, wealth across Western Europe grew exponentially. This was long before colonialism even began in the Western Hemisphere. Western Europe, and if you look at the castles and the cathedrals and the opulence of Western Europe, for about 5 centuries, Quisha, Western Europe was the wealthiest region in the world. Western Europe, France especially, France, Spain, Germany, England, these were the wealthiest countries in the world pre-Columbus. The only regions of the world that could rival Western Europe at about 1000 AD was China and India. That's it. But Western Europe was wealthy long before slavery even began. So this idea that slavery built wealth is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This whole idea that slaves were taken because they were Black is completely ridiculous.
That too.
They simply took the most vulnerable, and though, I mean, again, I hate even having to continuously go back to slavery and explain it to people who, if they spent just, I mean, I don't know, a day, a week studying slavery would dispel their assumptions and misconceptions, without even having to do a ton of work.
I don't know though, Chuck. I don't know, because I think that that's part of the reason why I started to turn this, like, try to push back on these debates to make people have to defend their positions. That's the goal. Because when we're just talking at them and we're showing them the facts,
yeah, it won't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like,
they have to hear themselves.
Yes, they need to hear the things come out of their mouth, and the thought needs to actually go forth. Because sometimes even with yourself, you're like, you think something in your head, and then when you actually say, you're like, whoa, that is, sorry, I didn't, like, that doesn't make any sense. But most of the time, these people are just sitting in the echo chamber.
Yeah.
Nobody is ever challenging them, especially in the Black community, about, especially these Black churches, which is where a lot of this stuff comes from. I know it's not, when I say that's where it comes from, I know it wasn't bred there, but it is, it wasn't born there, but it's bred there, I should say. And so when these people say these things, nobody is ever pushing back. And I want to get to a point where I can't have these conversations with or a debate with like a Jamal Bryant, so the world can see. I don't care and even if it's not me, somebody, excuse me, so the world can see how ignorant these people are and how not biblical they're that they're the things that they are standing on. That's my goal.
Yeah, but having ownership of whiteness is what gives you access to the spoils of the society. And so whiteness just simply replaces the word capital within this race Marxist paradigm. It just switches it. And so, this whole idea that our current free market system is, it's invalid, because it sort of owes Black people something, is based upon this whole anti-white, anti-Eurocentric ideology that seeks to kind of put this Marxian ideological spin on historical events, regardless of what the evidence or what the fact shows them. This is ideological spin that is rooted in anti-white bias. This is where this comes from, and it's based upon it. There's a term for, there's a theory within the study of, and I use the term study loosely because these aren't academic disciplines, but nevertheless, you have something called, of course, post-colonial theory, right? And within post-colonial theory is a kind of like a sub theory within a larger theory of something called what do they call it? Primitive accumulation theory. Primitive accumulation theory, which was just to simplify, it tries to come up with this or promotes this idea that prior to our kind of current economic framework, there was this kind of proto-capitalism, if you will, that had to oppress and exploit, non-Europeans in order to kind of get the ball rolling on this whole thing that we refer to as modern capitalism today. Again, completely ridiculous, because of course, capitalism is not an economic system. Capitalism is a set of ideological precepts that justifies the existence of a certain type of property, which in this case would be capital. This is why these people who claim they're anti-capitalism and all this stuff, this is why they attack every institution, because every institution, and this is according to Marx and Engels themselves, every institution, it circles the wagons around the property owning class so as to convince the exploited that they ought to get used to living a life of drudgery because the Bible says so, because the law says so, because art says so, your mother and father says so, and so on and so forth. And so these are examples of capitalism. It's not economics, it's ideological, or it's philosophical from their particular point of view. And so they move and they maneuver and operate in various fields, which brings us to this question of law, because they don't believe that, considering the fact that the way the legal system is currently set up. Remember when you were debating Bottom Line a couple of nights ago, and he was talking about slavery, and then he went on to erroneously, asinine take, that he tries to make a point of the evils of slavery and how wicked it went, and jumps forward to the present day and say, look how many Black people are incarcerated in America today. And that somehow has something to do with the slavery that was going on in the United States, well over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got you. So when you look at the statistics, when you say to yourself, wow, it seems as though for some reason, Blacks just have a greater propensity for law breaking. Why is this? The problem is not with the behavior of the individuals. Of course, the problem is with the law itself. Seeing as how law was created to protect the powerful. Again, this is the conspiratorial mind. This is the conspiratorial Marxist mind. Everything is a conspiracy because everything is a zero-sum game. Everything is based upon exploitation and the rest of it. And so law was created to protect the interests of the powerful. And so therefore, there is no standard of conduct, meaning that, if any of us, regardless of color, violate the law as written, then we are to be held to account for the things that we do. It's not that.
No.
Law must be, it is completely contrary to our ideal of the fact that we are a nation of laws, not a nation of men. We are a nation of men, or a nation governed by men, as opposed to, let me correct that, a nation governed by men as opposed to governed by laws. There is no rule of law. That's how you have tyranny.
Exactly.
Right? Let's say, well, we don't want that. Okay. So they say this, they say, well, considering the fact that Black people were exploited and victimized to create the country, we have superior moral claims. This is according to Derek Bell himself. He is the father of critical legal studies. He graduated from, I think it was Pittsburgh Law School in 1957. He never practiced law. He went on to be, he was a...
I thought he went to Harvard.
No. He graduated, I think, did he? No, he did. He never attended Harvard. He got a job on Harvard's faculty. He was the first Black faculty member.
That's right.
Of Harvard's law school. Okay. He graduated, I think, from the University of Pittsburgh in 1957. He was brought onto Harvard's faculty in the wake of the MLK assassination. Okay, when the grievance pimps began to turn our university, began to turn the American university structure upside down. Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. If you don't know about what happened in 68, 69, Just go back and do your research, read about it, and do the history of it, or learn the history of it. I mean, it was complete insanity. You had students commandeering university property and taking faculty members and deans of colleges hostage and refusing to release them unless they agreed to institute curricula that spoke directly to the quote unquote Black plight. This is how we ended up with
Wow.
This is how we ended up with feminist studies and African American studies and gay studies. And this is how we got this. It was through terrorism on our campuses. That's how it came about. And again, it was all
like today with the Palestinians and the Jews, same thing.
Absolutely. That's how we got it. And so to go back to Bell, this became, again, and it's worth kind of getting into Bell and getting into his academic career, because he was such a phony. He went on, got a job working with the NAACP, left the NAACP. He left one position. No, I'm sorry. He began working for the federal government. That was his first gig directly out of law school. He began working for the federal government within the Department of Justice. He began working with their working for their civil rights division. So he was working for the civil rights division within the Department of Justice. Left his position as a bureaucrat, and that's when he began to work for the NAACP. Under whose tutelage, you may ask? None other than future Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. So Thurgood Marshall,
I don't know much about Thurgood Marshall.
Was the mentor of Derek Bell. Derek Bell leaves the NAACP because all of a sudden everybody's wanting, we need Black professors. We need Black.
Wait, Thurgood Marshall was woke? Was a Marxist?
Oh yeah, he was woke.
What? I didn't know that. I really don't know much about him at all.
Yeah, Thurgood. Yeah, he was woke. But look, yeah. But anyway, so Derek Bell believes. Now this is how asinine this gets. Derek Bell believes that, considering that racism is a permanent fixture in American society, that Blacks literally should have the wherewithal to handpick which laws they want to follow and which laws they don't. Because it is unfair to expect a Black person to abide by the same standard of law when they have a higher or greater propensity for law breaking, considering the fact that they are a disadvantaged minority living under a system of white supremacy. And so the law should not, this is where we are today. The law should not be applied to Blacks equally because Blacks are morally, or have this, these are his words, have superior moral claims. So you cannot enforce the law on them to the same degree that you would a white person.
And Derek Bell said this?
Derek Bell said this. He is the creator of, again, critical. He and another scholar by the name of Alan Freeman. They wrote a book. I forgot what it's called. Race, Power, and something or another. But again, critical legal. Anytime you hear the word critical, you know what you're talking about. You know what you're dealing with. But this is all this kind of, Quisha, this post World War II neoliberal order that we saw. Say in our institutions, they began to embrace a new kind of academic methodology referred to as interdisciplinarity, which means they began to take different academic fields and combine them in order to go about the business of fixing a social ill. And so this is when you saw the progressives really began to attack the legal system in the 1970s. Even something as simple, Quisha, as your Miranda rights. That was a progressive step toward hollowing out our legal system, because the whole purpose of it was to equalize, if you will, the degree to which certain individuals were convicted of crimes, because what the scholars began to see is that people who were not as educationally inclined, if you will, were more had a higher likelihood that they would say something incriminating. And so the burden was then placed on was placed on law enforcement to make sure that the suspect was abreast of their constitutional rights. Not only that, but the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, I think is the Fourth Amendment, it does not state that an individual has the right to counsel during interrogation. There was not Miranda v. Ohio. I think Miranda v. Ohio came after, but prior to Miranda v. Ohio was a Supreme Court decision called Escovedo v. Illinois. Escovedo v. Illinois said that it was law enforcement had to make you aware of your constitutional rights and make sure that you know that you do not have to speak to law enforcement without counsel present. But you have the right to representation in a court of law, says the Bill of Rights, not in an interrogation room. The progressive legal activists they inferred that meaning into the Constitution, but that was not the original intent. So as a result, this is when you began to see of course, this gigantic explosion and crime and whatnot in the 1960s and for other reasons. But again, the idea was that, it isn't fair that some criminals know their rights and others don't. So it's up to detectives to tell everyone, you don't have to talk to me. Are you aware that anything you say can and will be used against you in the court? I was like, no, let them talk all they want to talk.
Wow.
But so it just made it harder for law enforcement to get convictions. It was not like they were just running around rounding up innocent people. That's not what police officers have never done that, ever.
Oh, you let them tell it. The modern police is just a vestige of the slave patrols, Chuck.
Right. That's
I don't even. I want to go there, but I don't. But okay, I want to read this quote from Up from Slavery, Booker T. Washington, and then I want to play this clip, and I want your feedback on both. Okay. So Booker T. Washington, this is Up from Slavery, his autobiography. He says, this is on page 47, the temptations to enter political life were so alluring that I came very near yielding to them at one time, but I was kept from doing so by the feeling that I would be helping in a more substantial way by assisting in the laying of the foundation of the race through a generous education of the hand, head, and heart. I saw colored men who were members of the state legislators and county officers who, in some cases, could not read or write, or whose morals were as weak as their education. Okay? And now I want to play this clip.
Speak on behalf of myself, Minister Dominique Alexander. I speak on behalf of myself as president of the Next Generation Action Network. The Next Generation Action Network wanted to respect this process, to be able to make sure that nobody said that the Next Generation Action Network obstructed this process, interfered in this process. But what this process did is shown that Black lives do not matter in Collin County. It showed us that time and time in American history, it has shown us to remove emotions from yet the law. This trial showed that it put emotions over the law. After Trayvon Martin and so many countless names, it has shown us that Black life is not safe in Collin County. It showed us that they did not listen to the law. It showed clearly that a judge interfered in this process. It showed very clearly that a Black boy was allowed not one Black soul on a jury.
I gotta stop right there. Sorry, I just have to, because when he said that the first time, it caught my eye. I'm like, what is a Black soul? What's a Black soul?
A black person that has a soul.
Because apparently it must be something different than everybody else's soul.
It must be something.
As I know, when I say Black soul, I mean, you don't want my definition of Black soul. You just stop throwing that around there, Dominique, because that's, I don't know if you want that, brother. Well, hold on, let's let him finish.
An all white jury convicted him in 2 to 3 hours. We know that they did not prove their case. They are currently sentencing Karmelo Anthony, but we know that the Next Generation Action Network put the first $10,000 towards an appellate attorney. And we will fight Collin County like hell. I respected this process. I allowed and called for peace in this process. But Black America should be very upset about what went on today. Now, before all of the internet lawyers and before all of the interpretation of the situation, I'm only an advocacy leader. I'm not an attorney. I can only help families be able to navigate these processes when they find themselves in this type of situation.
So Dominique, you know, he was like, well, I got a long rap sheet, doesn't really care. I shook a baby, a little 2-month-old or 2-year-old, a young child so hard that there was brain injury, but it's okay. I'm gonna just call myself a minister and get on out there and give it to her. But I've just found what Booker T. Washington wrote. When did he write this? In the early 1900s, I believe. When he says that this allure to go into politics when you don't know anything, and when your morals are just as low as what you know. Like you might, what he's saying, he talks more about this, but you should want to know something before you get in there and start like doing all this stuff. He was basically telling him, he was like, I feel like something's up with this, you know, like, because why are all these people who don't really know anything about this? They're just like, oh yes, I'm going to be a preacher and then I'm going to go into politics. It was just, even for Booker T. Washington, he was looking around like, what is this? And I just found it so sad and just, you know, telling that what the Marxists did, they saw that thread forming and they jumped on it and it became a wedge. And that's what they do with every country that they try to take over. So what are your thoughts on this and what else can you add?
I mean, you know, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. I mean, Booker T. Washington was 100% correct. And not only that, of course, you know, there's a famous quote where, you know, Booker T talks about a lot of Black preachers of his day. He said, you know, these men, you know, I'm paraphrasing, kind of adding my own little modern day spin on it. He didn't say it quite like this, but he was pretty much like, y'all could barely read last week. Now all of a sudden, y'all want to be preachers.
He knew
something's wrong with this.
Yeah.
So remember, and I'm going to say something that's going to be very unpopular, but it's something that I said, I don't know, some weeks ago on Quisha show when I was talking to you guys about Reconstruction. Listen to what Booker T said. He talk about administrators and state county officials and politicians and so on and so forth. You know, a lot of people look at Reconstruction as a, you know, like this glorious time in America when you know, Blacks were coming into the fold as far as politics are concerned and all these things. And I'm gonna tell you guys, they were being used by the Union, being used by the federal government to expand the power of the federal government. Okay, and then when I said what I said a couple of weeks ago, and I specifically remarked about the Ku Klux Klan. A lot of, you know, some people, and this is what brought the one gentleman who was suffering from a severe case of TDS. So I was talking about, I didn't know what I was talking about. There was friction and tension going back and forth on both sides because the North was continuing to aggress against the South. And the anti-Southern bigotry was so intense in the North that many of Lincoln's closest allies, and one of the most talked about generals in history during that time, Thaddeus Stevens, he was upset that the war ended because he wanted to exterminate every Southerner, or at least every pro-Confederate Southerner. He didn't want the war to end. He was actually upset that the South had surrendered because he wanted to exterminate them. And there were many. This was the first. This was during this particular time of Reconstruction. This was the first time we saw the federal government began to try and institute a kind of public education system, a kind of federalized public education system, so as to rid the newly, I guess, reconstructed Union of the Dixie mindset, the rebellious mindset. And so you saw the Klan. It wasn't just simply Confederates that refused to go away and admit to defeat. No, it was out of anger by how they were continuously abused by the North. Again, I don't want, because that's a different topic, but I think it relates exactly to what Booker T. Washington is saying, because Black people were being used. They were being used by the federal government and being used by the Union to increase the scope, the size, and the influence of the federal government. And these people did not know what they were doing. They barely understood the civic process, and they were selling out, particularly the South. They were selling out the South to the federal government. And Booker T. Washington may not explain this exactly like this, but again, a lot of the Southern hostility was occurred as a result of continued Northern aggression, particularly, Quisha, in the form of something called federal union leagues. And you can look this up. They claim that these union leagues were privately funded, but I have seen other scholars who make the claim that these union leagues were federally subsidized. But you could just look up what were union leagues. And this is what the Ku Klux Klan was reacting to. They were created in response to the meddling of these Northern Union leagues in the South. And they were creating a kind of political patronage program, again, so as to sort of convince newly enfranchised Blacks to support the agenda of the Republican Party for having opened the door and granted them the franchise. Not what is best for each state, or what is in the best interest of themselves. You do or vote the way we tell you to vote, because you in essence owe us now.
Listen to this, Chuck. So this, I was going to read this first, but I wanted to kind of get straight to the point. But since you brought that up, so this is right before, this is up from slavery, right before I read you the quote about the temptations to enter political life. So in the previous paragraph on page 47, he says, I felt that the Reconstruction, you know what, let me start from the beginning of the paragraph. Though I was but little more than a youth during the period of Reconstruction, I had the feeling that mistakes were being made and that I could not remain in the, and things could not remain in the condition that they were in very long. I felt that the Reconstruction policy, so far as it related to my race, was in a large measure on a false foundation, was artificial and forced. In many cases, it seemed to me that the ignorance of my race was being used as a tool with which to help white men into office, and that there was an element in the North which wanted to punish the Southern white men by forcing the Negro into positions over the heads of the Southern whites. I felt that the Negro would be the one to suffer for this in the end.
That's right.
Besides, just one more sentence. What? I think one more sentence. Besides the general political agitation drew the attention of our people away from the more fundamental matters of perfecting themselves in the industries at their doors and in securing property.
That's right. All it did was empower the government. It's the same old, same old.
Same old. And Booker T goes on to talk about that. He goes on to say, like, he's like, I understand their dependency on the federal government because they came out of slavery, but it was basically like he was saying, I hope y'all do realize that's the same group, it's the same government that enslaved you. You do, you know what I mean? Like he was trying to say that.
Right. The Fugitive Slave Act, that was federal, right?
Yes.
Scott, that was the the United States Supreme Court, federal. If you decompartmentalize and you diffuse power, sort of vertically and horizontally, if you will, across the breadth and width of this nation, that is how you secure freedom, or how best you can secure freedom, is that you compartmentalize power so that you give the citizens a choice in where it is they choose to live, because they can simply evade or go beyond the scope or go beyond the boundaries of the taxing authority, go beyond the boundaries of the legislative authority of any given body. But once you centralize power, once you centralize authority, there's nowhere for anyone to go. And what happens is, considering the fact that human beings are inherently flawed, my flaws have limited range if my power is thus limited. But if I have almost infinite power, then my inherent shortcomings and flaws can infect every aspect of the society. This is what the Confederates understood. And to go back to what Booker T. Washington was saying, he's saying, you all are being used to strengthen, and it's the same thing the civil rights apparatus would do 100 years later that they were doing in the 1860s and the 1870s.
Yes.
Worry about yourself. Stop. And this was the response. It's so keen. I'm so glad you read that quote from Booker T. Washington, because that is, in fact, what white Southerners were responding to. Because the Northerners were embittering blacks, because prior to, black and white Southerners, they got along. People
hate to hear that.
They taught and convinced them to hate their white Southern brethren. And that's when all the chaos ensued. Race relations after the Civil War got worse.
Just like the Civil Rights Act, just like Barack Obama, because when you lead with division, what are you gonna get? More division.
White Southerners were saying, we can't. A lot of them are former slaves, and they don't know. They aren't aware. You have to understand the heyday of slavery, particularly in the United States, was from about 17. I mean, it didn't last that long. Maybe like between 100 and 115 years. But you have to understand the pattern in the process. This is why when we mention Western civilization, you're talking Western civilization, you're going all the way back to Socrates, for crying out loud, right? This is a long pattern of failure and success and keeping things that work and discarding things that don't work. And we have our writing system. But remember, in Rome, what did they have? They had Roman numerals. They realized that Roman numerals were impractical. So what did the whites pick up? They picked up the Arabic numerical system and incorporated their form of numerical script and got rid of Roman numerals.
You know what it's almost like, Chuck, when you describe it? Like, it's almost like evolution theory. The survival of the fittest. It's the thing, but in this sense, it really happened. As we evolved as human beings, we took things that worked for us and that were good, and we discarded things that didn't. I don't know why they can't understand this about Marxism and communism. Like, we don't want it. It ain't never worked. Why they can't disregard that?
Because life is about more than economic and wealth and material success. Life is about meaning. And this is the one thing that I think individuals like John Locke and even David Hume and many other classical liberal philosophers didn't quite understand. They didn't really understand how important the meaning of life was. But that's a totally different conversation, I guess. I don't want to get too deep. But the thing is, Europeans had contact with all sorts of people. They had contact with the peoples of Central Asia. They had contact with the peoples from the Far East. They had contact with the peoples of Africa. They were, Europe was the subcontinent of Europe was ravaged by the bubonic plague, which over time gave them a very impressive immune system that the Native Americans here in the Western Hemisphere didn't have. I mean, Europeans went through the ringer. They've endured slave raids from Muslims. They've endured plagues. They've endured wars. Europeans have been warring with each other for centuries. There's an old joke. There's an old joke that
they learned. That's why they became more advanced, because they learned. They didn't do, like, no shade, but some of these African countries, we just keep on going. We can just go keep on doing the same thing and getting the same result. It's the same thing that they're doing in California and all these liberal states and cities. Well, it burned down. Our mayor didn't do nothing, but we're gonna vote her back in anyway. It's just so ridiculous. I do want to address this comment right here.
Go ahead, Quisha.
How can Ryan Taylor 792 says, how can you believe in one version but not the original version of evolution? Shake my head. Well, Ryan, I don't know, but the original version of evolution is a theory. It's evolution theory, okay? It's not a fact. And there is no evidence. There's zero evidence, okay, that we evolved. There was macro evolution. Where are the fossils from when an eye was growing on your knee? Where's the fossil record for that? There would be millions, gazillion. There should be millions of fossil records that shows macro evolution. And you know what we have? We have zero. So thank you very much. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk on that one. But you're wrong. It is not. There's nothing to believe in, because it's there's no evidence for it.
Like, Ryan, take your blocks, take your Legos, and crawl over in the corner in the sandbox and go play while the grown folks talking. Okay.
Basically,
we're talking about genetic evolution. We're talking about cultural diffusion that occurred over the previous 1,000, 2,000 years or so.
He doesn't know analogies, obviously.
He's taking the idea of evolution, like you said, trying to compare it to the scientific theory of the origin of species, again, which they kind of conflate those two things. But anyway, my point is to go back to what we're talking about with Booker T. Washington's quote. Southerners had enough wisdom and they had the wherewithal to know that these people they're not ready. And it wasn't that, well, we hate the Negro, or we hate Black people. It's that they in due time. But right now, it has to be a slow, protracted process. But we can't just abruptly upend things and change things, right? Because to do so would be extremely dangerous, because we may wreck the entire machine. This is why I got on Bottom Line's case so heavily last time I was on here, when he kept going on and on about the Haitian Revolution. And I'm saying, like, this is why Haiti is in the position that it's in, and every other African country for that matter, is because they did not understand what it was that they were inheriting. They were bad stewards and bad custodians of the legacy of Western civilization, because they aren't familiar with it. It's not a, and again, I get that when you're born, when you come into the world, I mean, your lifespan is only X amount of years. I get it and I understand. But when you are completely removed from the social, from the cultural context, and that involves symbols, it involves language, it involves so much. You don't understand something as simple as this brings me to something Thomas Sowell talked about when he, not Thomas Sowell. I think he was because I think I read about it in one of Thomas Sowell's works. I think he was referring to the work of another sociologist, another economist, and that is countries that have what he referred to as a high degree of trustworthiness are the societies that thrive economically. In other words, if you were to if you were to leave your wallet, how many of you all have left your wallet or your purse behind somewhere and went back, or a credit card or something, and went back the next day and someone turned it in?
What? Okay. I got to go here because you just brought it up. When I was, if y'all are a member, y'all already know this story. If you're a member, one of my members on my channel, you already know this story. I told you guys about this yesterday. But speaking of a trustworthy society, I was on vacation and I lost my wedding ring. Yes, I lost my wedding ring. And here's the thing. We went to go I got to tell the story real quick because first of all, it's a miracle. We went to go pick up my friend from our other friend from the airport Sunday. She was supposed to get there on Friday. Mr. Flight got there on Sunday. I was taking off my ring to put on lotion. And when we were pulling up, I was helping find her and I saw her. Anyway, long story short, I get out of the car to help her with her bags and my ring was still in my lap. We drive off. Our friend that we're visiting lives 45 minutes away from the airport. We're getting ready to go to the lake. We got the boat hooked up. Well, not us, but her husband and his people, hooked the boat up to the truck, hooked the jet ski up, and we are about to go have some fun. We stopped, get gas, and then we're about to go to the lake. I look down. That's when I see that my ring is not on my finger. I completely freak out. I'm like, there was no thoughts going through my head. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, listen, total, complete freak out. I did not want to make that phone call to my husband to tell him that I had lost my wedding ring. Okay. So I was just in sheer panic and like fear was just paralyzed me. Anyway, we go back to the gas station. It's not there. We go back to her house. It's not there. And then, of course, the only place it was the airport. Now, mind you, it was now 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon. We had picked her up at 9 o'clock that morning. So I didn't really have much faith. I had probably about a mustard seed of faith. I would not let myself say it's not there. The ring's not going to be, my ring's gone. I wouldn't think that. I would not let myself think that. My friend, her mom, and everybody's like, yep, you probably need to start preparing, to tell Antonio what, because I was like, I can't call him unless, I wasn't ready to call him. And I wasn't ready to say it wasn't there. So we go back to the airport, 45 minutes away now. Okay. I see, first of all, when I pull up, this is the airport. It's nobody there.
Okay.
It's a security car. The security guard, there was a lady sitting on a bench, and there was like a couple people further down, and then another car further up. That was it. It wasn't people coming in. This is the front this is the pickup arrivals. No, at Richmond International, nobody is there. I don't know why that struck me so weird. We pull up. I asked the security guard, have you seen a ring and blah, blah, blah. He said, no, call Lost and Found. I had already called Lost and Found. Side note, the lady who's ever at Richmond International Lost and Found, your attitude needs a little bit of adjusting, but that's okay. Especially for a woman who is in crisis. And I was still being very nice. Anyway, I get out of the car to talk to the security guard, and my friend, she pulls up. Mind you, we got the jet ski on the back of her truck, okay? So he starts pointing. I'm thinking he's pointing to the jet ski, thinking like, oh, you know, y'all got to move that up out of here or whatever. I looked down, and my ring was still on the ground. It didn't get stuck in nobody's tire. It didn't get kicked around. Let me tell you, we witnessed that was a miracle. That was a miracle, because I believe that we live in the kind of society that if somebody would have seen it, it would have been gone. Right. So that was only the Lord God Almighty. That was a miracle. Listen, y'all don't know. It was only 4 hours at an airport. It's only, I mean, it's a little bumped and bruised, you know, but my husband's like, we'll take care of that. But that's it. I was like, maybe I should just keep it like this, because memories, right? Yeah. But y'all, when I tell you that God is good. And then when I saw the ring, when I saw it, I picked it up and we were rejoicing and thanking Jesus. I told everybody, whoever was there, if you don't know the Lord Jesus Christ, you need to meet him today. My friends was like, Quisha was preaching. I sure was, because y'all do not understand. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say, you know, my husband has been very, very good to me. I have a beautiful ring, a beautiful, absolutely beautiful ring. I didn't want to tell that man that it was, you know. Oh my gosh. So yes, I said all of that to talk about, to say what being in a high trust society, you know, what that is. I believe if anybody would have seen it, it would have been gone, because that's the society that we live in. So I just wanted to say that, and
it's tough, kid. I mean,
total miracle.
Yeah, and that's not a good sign. That was just my point. You know, when societies begin to morally decline in this way, because in order to have I mean, because the bottom line is that economics are economics. It's just like, I mean, you don't have to. I don't have to understand Newtonian physics to know that if I jump off of the roof of a building, I'm going to go down. You understand? Economics are the same way, right? They have laws just like every other science, that they're just as objective and concrete. And every economic system is predicated upon the creation of markets. And this is why Europe was able to thrive long before slavery even began, is because they began to expand and diversify their markets. And I say all of that to say is that capitalism as an economic system, it isn't a phase in the dialectical process, according to Marx and Engels. Capitalism, quote unquote capitalism, it just is what it is. The free market system is as old as man itself.
Mm-hmm.
Free market.
Yeah, I think you said that on Chad, with Chad.
It just you know, it just is what it is. But in order to have it, you must have honor. The people within a society must have honor.
Yes.
Because no one is obligated to produce anything for you. If you feel as though you have the right to someone else's labor, if you feel as though you have a right to someone else's things, then we have reached a point of no return, because you cannot generate or create wealth in this manner. What you will do effectively is disincentivize wealth creation, because you've created a society of untrustworthiness and hostility. And the countries that do not thrive economically are countries that rank very low on the trustworthiness scale, meaning that, you know, if someone, you know, drops their wallet and say, I don't know, pick some African country. I mean, they are so corrupt.
Corrupt.
And so backward and so tribal and so
Haiti too. Haiti too. And the dude's like, well, we was the first to get free. Yeah, but y'all are freaking corrupt today. Like, what you talking about?
It is dog eat dog. The society is corrupt. The politicians are. I mean, again, we have. Well, this is not that we have our fair share. Trust me, I understand. But we still live in a society where a great deal of people, if they're backing out of a parking spot and they happen to tap your car and leave a mark, they'll leave their name and the phone number to contact them. So that way, you know, if you need to have your car repaired, go through my insurance. I'm sorry I bumped into your car. You weren't around, but here's my name and number. Give me a call. I'm the person that dinged your car. There are a lot of people left in America that will still do that.
Absolutely.
But in other countries where they don't thrive, you don't have this kind of communal brotherhood, sisterhood, fraternity, sorority thing happen. You don't have it in these kind of backward societies. And those are the societies that don't thrive. And I say all of that because to go all the way back to the tradition of Western thought, the peoples in the South knew that the slave, he did not understand the ways. He did not understand the Western mind. He could get there, but he wasn't ready yet. The same thing, for example, I'll give you another example, Quisha, like in India, right? In India, customarily, like traditionally, especially if you are a part of the untouchable caste in India. And when people think of the caste system in India, they don't even realize how complex it is because untouchables is not a caste. There are about 4,000 castes within the group of individuals known as untouchables. So you have untouchables, and within that group are about 4,000 other castes that are considered part of the untouchable group. Now, in India, I don't know if they still practice this, and in some parts of India, I'm sure they still do. If you're a conservative Indian, quote unquote, right? That when you're preparing food, it is considered bad luck if a human being casts a shadow over the meal. So if you happen to step wrong, you know, and you step and the sun's behind you and you cast a shadow over the meal, you've cursed the food and it has to be thrown out. They can't eat a food if a human being casts a shadow on it, particularly if that
in India, you're already struggling and you got to throw food out.
Particularly if that individual is part of the untouchables. You cannot cast a shadow over anyone's food because it is cursed. It cannot be eaten. And so, you know, I'm saying all of that. It takes some serious convincing in time for people to say, you know what, that's been our tradition since long before we can remember. But we have to stop doing that because that's not a good thing. Okay. And so this is what the Southerners were talking about. And they were talking about just letting slaves loose and just letting them have free reign, giving them the franchise and letting them decide the political fate of our country. Many of these men are barely literate, just like Booker T. Washington said. They're barely literate. We cannot extend them the franchise because they're going to ruin the country. And look where we are today. And let me just give you this quote right here, Quisha. This is, you know who Cecil Rhodes is, right? Cecil Rhodes is one of the biggest villains. You let these black supremacists, these black academics and black activists, they'll tell you that Cecil Rhodes is one of the worst human beings that ever lived. Cecil Rhodes didn't have a racist bone in his body. As a matter of fact, he saved more Africans than he killed Africans. Okay, and that is in a general sense true of colonialism in general. White Spaniards, or you know, the conquista, they're gonna know it means conqueror, which again the Spanish were not conquerors. That's an insult, but I digress. They saved more indigenous lives than they sacrificed. Let me give you a quote from Cecil Rhodes, and he said, Quisha, because you heard of the Rhodes Scholarship, right? Cecil Rhodes died, I think, in 1903. I'm guessing. He said before he died, this is his legacy now, the Rhodes Scholarship.
Yeah.
He said that his scholarship, he explicitly stated this, I believe it's in his will, if memory serves me correctly, but he said that my scholarship is not reserved for white men only. It's for anyone. How long do you think it took before a black person was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship? If you had to guess.
When was he around?
Cecil Rhodes, let's say he died in like 1903, 1904, somewhere around there. Somebody, I could look it up real quick.
I would say within 10 years of it being created.
Less than that.
Really?
First person to the first African American to be awarded a Rhodes Scholarship. I think it was about 4 years after his death, sometime around 1907, 1908. And the black person that was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship just so happened to be the founder of the Harlem Renaissance. But here is Cecil Rhodes. This is one of his famous quotes talking about whites. He said this in a speech before the British Parliament in 1894. And this is the mindset of many white people, then, now, any other time. He says, now I say the natives are children. He's talking about Native Africans. Now I say the natives are children. They are just emerging from barbarism. Sounds insulting, right? But listen, they have human minds. We ought to do something with the minds and the brains that the Almighty has given them. I do not believe that they are different from ourselves.
Wow.
Now he's talking about voting. He says, when asked to clarify about voting rights for the civilized man, because they were having this debate about voting, and Cecil Rhodes said voting should be reserved for the civilized man. Here's how he clarified that. He said, a man, white or black, who has sufficient education to write his name, has some property or works, in fact, is not a loafer. And that's who he considered to be a civilized man. Doesn't matter if he's black or white, he must have sufficient education, enough to write his name and own some property, and he has to contribute to the society and not be a loafer.
Mm-hmm.
This was in 1894.
People don't believe me when I tell them, like, I talked to my grandmother who was born in the 1930s, and her brother, who was born a little bit before her. I asked them straight up, like, what did your parents, who were my great grandparents, what did they tell y'all about, being black and race and all this kind of stuff? They were looking at me like I was crazy, Chuck. They was like, they taught us that that nobody's better than you. They didn't really talk about race like that. It wasn't even really like a thing. I was sitting there shocked because I'm thinking, it's about, you're about to tell me, like, the horror stories and all this kind of stuff. But they didn't take every bad thing that happened to them and make it like it was their life. They just took it on the chin and kept it pushing, just like what most other people do. But somehow, and as I'm going to wrap this up, but somehow we have gotten to a place to where if you happen to have high melanin pigment, then everything that happens to you, particularly done by a white person, then it is automatically racist. Then it is somehow you are being put upon. Even you can go and stab somebody for not letting you sit under their tent, and you can still somehow be the victim.
And he knew
by the so-called ministers.
And he knew when he went up under that tent, he knew what the reaction would be. And he said to himself going in, I bet not none of these mo better tell me to leave this tent.
Yeah.
He knew going into that tent. Everybody, like I said, I went to predominantly black high school. I graduated from the Detroit public school system, and I graduated from Cass Tech High School. And if you're from Detroit, you know all about the Cass Tech MLK rivalry, right? Cass Tech and King, Cass and King. I mean, when I was in high school, whenever Cass and King, whenever we faced off with one another, at a football game, basketball game, I mean, like literally, you never knew. You had to be on guard at all times because it was gonna be a fight, right? It was almost like gang warfare. When I had my Cass Tech varsity jacket on because I was on a football team. If you was out in public and you ran into the King football team at the mall, hey,
it was on.
It might go down. It could go down anywhere, anytime. You already knew what time it was. So they would do stuff to antagonize us. We would do stuff to antagonize them. Sometimes me and my boys, if we was bored in school, we'd just like, man, let's go cut class. Let's go, because King and Cass is not too far of a drive. So we would say, hey, bro, let's and by the time we was juniors and seniors, we was like the head honchos at the school. So we just walk right out the front door, you know what I mean? And then security guards would be like, there goes what's the name of them again? So we just leave. Some of us was driving. We'll hop up in the car. We'll mob up 4 and 5 deep. We would go right to King and circle around to try to catch some of King's students that's at the bus stop and see if we can catch some of them by themselves outnumbered. And we would just jump out the car and beat them up, you know, and they would do little stuff like that to us too, you know, and that's just how it went down, you know, and it got real serious to a point where it was like, bruh, yeah, man, we might want to call the truth and temper this down a little bit, because in a minute, man, something really gonna happen to somebody. It was really like that. But like I said,
I want to show. You just made me think of this. That I saw this earlier. I just want to show this really quick because it was just kind of sick. What people were saying. Hold on, just really quick, you guys. I just want to show you. Oh, and let me just give a shout out to DT. DT, thank you for the $5 super chat. Keep bringing the truth, Quisha and Chuck. We need your voices. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I did not say hello to. Did I say hi to Carmen? Hi, Carmen. Hi, Paul. Hi, Deb. Hello, hello. Thank you, guys. Dog Catcher, thanks for being here. Kevin Good. Moot. Thank you. We watch. Hi. Did I say hi earlier? I'm not sure. If I haven't said hello, well, thank you for being here. I want to play this clip for you guys, and then sorry, wrong button. And we'll be getting up out of here. I hope this is the right video.
Let it rip.
All right, let's see. Okay, let's see. Oops.
This killer walks away free, not guilty. Self-defense. Then we have Karmelo Anthony, who's minding his business under a friend's tent. He defends himself against 2 thugs. They order him to leave the tent, have no jurisdiction over him. He defends himself. So the fact that they gave him first-degree murder, y'all, and not manslaughter, second-degree, first-degree, and even the fact, y'all, the judge, Austin's dad, have photos together on his Facebook page. The fact that the jury had not one black person on it.
I don't think the Karmelo Anthony case was really about self-defense. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but hear me out. Really, this is about the humanity of blackness versus the authority of whiteness. Black humanity and white authority. Can white people do whatever they want and say whatever they want to black people and get away with it, essentially? Austin Metcalf wouldn't have ran up on Karmelo if he wouldn't have thought he had the authority to do so. But in the black community, who gives the authority to tell somebody to leave? And if it isn't actual authority, we're gonna call it out. That's a bullet.
Yeah. Blade was under the size.
That's okay.
But it was unlawful.
I don't feel like hearing. There's another. I don't feel like hearing Jasmine Crockett, but this one right here. This is Hotep Jesus. I was really shocked by these statements. Listen to this.
I wasn't.
Black person might stab you. Don't you think that's a good lesson to teach your children?
It's a good lesson, Hotep, if you're trying to perpetuate the worst stereotypes that people out there say in terms of what to do when you're around certain demographics.
I'm pretty sure if we look at social media, that stereotype already exists. Elon pushes it every day. So let's not act like I'm making it up.
Well, no, you're not making it up. You're perpetuating it.
Yes, I am, because that's how we operate.
Well, who's the we?
Black people. We have a fuck around and find out policy.
Excuse
Don't
the
start
language,
no shit.
sorry.
Won't be no shit. Keep your hands to yourself because we might hurt you. That is evident, and we are not apologetic about that. That is a stereotype, and stereotypes, just like you wouldn't walk into a tiger cage and mess with a tiger because it'll bite your head off. You don't want to fuck with black people because we might fucking kill you. I'm not afraid of the stereotype. Whether you want to teach your kids the stereotype or not doesn't matter to me. But I would tell my children, white, black, Latino, Asian, don't put your hands on people unless it's in self-defense. That's where the conversation starts with me. Had Austin Metcalf had his father around, but his father was beating on his wife, unfortunately. Had his father been around, he could have taught him to keep his hands to himself. But obviously, he learned from his father not to keep his hands to himself. That's why I say we need to have that talk with our children. Again, you won't agree to that, and that's problematic.
I won't agree to that. It's always best to keep your hands to yourself to avoid conflict. We can all agree with that. If your point is to say it's always best to avoid conflict with us because we will fucking kill you if we don't like the way you touched us, congrats on setting relations back 100 years by confirming the worst stereotypes that anybody's ever had. And by the way,
I
when
don't think so.
Adams said what he said, well, you don't think so, but and maybe if you want to talk about statistical overrepresentation when it comes to crime, it's that mentality that actually contributes to that statistical overrepresentation. And maybe you should be focusing on the right lessons for your community as opposed to the what you think is the right lessons for the white community.
I'm glad you brought that up. Because I have no interest in telling black people to turn into pussies. No, we are violent people. Humans are violent people. We've seen that all throughout history. If white people want to die because they're putting their hands on the people, you can teach your people to be peaceful. I'm not telling black people to be peaceful.
I can't
lay down and let people push them. We're not.
Okay, I can't. I don't even, and I don't know what else he's gonna say. But that was utterly disgusting.
And I'm not surprised by him. You know, people thought that, you know, he was another one of these kind of young, fresh, urban, conservative black faces. No, he's just another grifter, just like the rest of them.
Yeah.
You know, don't know his a-hole, his elbow from a hole from a hole in the wall. I'm not impressed by him at all. I never have been impressed by him.
But the fact to say it, like, yeah, like I said, I don't associate with these people just because we happen to have high melanin. He can be a collective in the group. That is not me, and I don't believe that is Chuck. Yeah. So when he's talking about black people are violent, we're just violent, and we're just gonna be violent, I'm not gonna try to correct my children from having this, from leaning into their sin. I'm just gonna let it rock.
Right.
You bet. Listen, let me tell you something. The people are telling you exactly what they think. Okay. If you, if you, I don't care what color you are, you need to be armed because these people are crazy.
Right. Yeah, for real.
And I just wanted to,
and if you live in a city or a state with, you know, very restrictive gun laws, I advise you to get up out of there. You know, especially
with the quickness.
Especially if you live around you know, a sizable black population. It's disgusting. You know,
I mean, when they're telling you like this, what else can we say?
Yeah, I mean,
you need to move if you live around a lot of black people. I mean, what else can you say?
I'm glad he said it. Be open and honest about it. He had no legal or moral justification to do what he did. You know, he was not assaulted. He was not shoved. He was not under the tent to escape the rain. None of those things are true. I don't know if he followed the trial at all, but the facts have come out. Surveillance footage shows that there was no rain. It had rained earlier, but the fact of the matter is that he didn't leave because he didn't want to leave. Like I said, this is why, you know, I brought up earlier some of the shenanigans that I used to play around with when I was in high school. And, you know, everybody knew how it was when you had your territory, you know, with your school. And if a rival school was, you know, where they shouldn't have been, you knew you were going to get approached. And if you snap back, then, you know, odds are that, you know, those schools are going to clash and there was going to be a big brawl, a big fight. You know, this is the kind of things, especially we see them in a lot of predominantly black high schools. And like I said, we had in the fist fights with rival schools, but, you know, we never stabbed anybody. You know what I mean? You don't get to respond with a knife to the chest. That's not how this works. And they say, well, that's what you get for putting your hands on us. Well, excuse me. I wonder how many black men died on that very same day at the hands of another black person. You understand what I'm saying? I wonder if, you know, Karmelo Anthony or, you know, someone else in Karmelo Anthony's position. I mean, you know, they kill other young black men all the time, but these stories, of course, don't make the news.
No.
And, you know, you got people dying for the dumbest reasons. And like I said, it's just sad and shameful. I like to just say before you get up off of here, Quisha, just a couple of points, and I'll let you close out. If you want, it's your show. But, you know, before I get up out of here, you know, Derek Bell came up with something. You know, he said that, and it's funny listening to Hotep Jesus. Like I said, I started off the conversation saying I knew. I said, oh, you know, stabbed him because
that's why I played it.
I know exactly what happened. Another black man, not just wanting to be tough, you know, really a punk. You know what I mean? This has nothing to do with Texas stand your ground laws. He was asked to leave the tent, witnesses say approximately 15 times. Upon request, he immediately got belligerent, began to insult all of the students in the surrounding area, referring to them as bees and hoes and P-U-S-S-Y. I know how it go. Like I said, because I was a young hothead kid once upon a time. I know how it go. I know exactly what he did. Instead of shooting a fair one, I don't care how big old boy was, instead of shooting a fair one, you know what I'm saying? He went ahead and you know, gave dude one time to the chest. And then you got this fool Jasmine Crockett talking about something. It can hardly be considered a deadly weapon. How big was it? It wasn't nothing about this big. And I hate to break it to you, Jasmine, but bullets are only this big.
Okay.
What are you talking about? It shouldn't hardly be considered a deadly weapon. It's you know, but anyway. But yeah, so
and do you know how hard you have to stab somebody to penetrate their chest?
Yeah. Yep.
He should have got life in prison, okay? Because that was depraved in my mind.
Yeah, well, that's one of the.
I understand young men and all of that, you know, get up out of here and what you doing, come see me, or I get it. I understand all that. I get it. I got a dad, I got a brother. I understand that. Well, my father has passed on, but I've heard him talk and see, I get that. But to turn around and stab somebody because they asked you to leave and even gave you, even if he did shove him, you're going to stab him in the chest? You a low down dirty dog. You a punk.
Yeah, you're a punk.
That is never.
Yeah, you got to pay for that. You know what I mean? This clown, this other clown. I can't stand these. I'm telling you, they're anti-white bigots. This little young cat with the hat with the dreads, referring to the Metcalf brothers as thugs, as they hold rifles, clearly in hunting garb. They were clearly hunting. You know, again, I don't know. I'm not saying that these were angels. I don't know anything about the personal lives of the Metcalf brothers. But I'm just saying, to call them thugs, really, dude? Really? Okay.
All these people are doing are they're acting out how they believe only in their mind white people really are.
Right. Because like I said,
that's what they do.
Right. This is a class collective guilt type of mentality. This is communist thinking. Their brains have been rotted out by, you know, all of this leftist propaganda. And that's the main problem here. I gotta say, Ryan Taylor, you are such a lame. Let me tell you why you're such a lame. Let me say this before I get up out of here. You are the biggest lame. Name me one person you know, Quisha, right, that would sit around. Where you go live Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He always showing up to argue with you and to debate other folks in the comment section as if he has nothing else better to do. Who wants to subject themselves to a 2-hour, 3-hour long conversation, listening to people say things that you find objectionable 3 times a week on average,
and never come up to defend your point?
But never show up in person to defend your point. You are such a lame. If you find what we say so objectionable, you either step up to the plate and debate one of us or both of us, or get the hell on. You don't see me scouring the internet looking for liberal chat rooms to go and drive myself crazy trying to debate the entire comment section and everybody else on the live stream. I have better things to do with my time. So I suggest, bruh, that you go and get a life. You are a lame. And the reason why I brought up, I could not remember if it was the 4th or the 5th, because I saw your comment in the comment section, okay? It was the 5th Amendment, the due process clause and all these other things. I made reference to the Supreme Court decision Escovedo versus Illinois. You should go and read the majority decision and read the dissent and make a decision based upon that once you have analyzed the case law, okay? The reality is, and this is,
you know good and doggone well, Ryan is not going to read no case law.
You talked about, about him being 17 and all that stuff. This is when, again, a lot of these progressive interpretations of our legal system became, a cause célèbre of the left in the 1960s, trying to inject or trying to come up with these fanciful ideas, again, based upon the idea of cruel and unusual punishment and all these things, trying to suggest that it is cruel and unusual to sentence someone who's 17, 18 years old to the death penalty and all these other things. Again, none of these things were written into our Constitution. They're just not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and in the case of Escovedo, who, again, it is not written in our Constitution that you are allowed legal counsel during interrogation. That was the main argument of the minority decision in Escovedo v. Illinois. Escovedo had his conviction overturned by the Supreme Court. He was, in fact, guilty. He was a lifelong criminal who, after having his conviction overturned by the Supreme Court, not too long after that, a few years later, he would go on to kill somebody else.
I need to address this. What else he said? These who don't understand the justice system has many, many, many flaws, to say the least. Did you think that we thought that our justice system was perfect?
It sure do.
It's ran by people, Ryan. People are flawed. We are very much aware that our justice system has flaws. We are aware that every system that is set up by man has flaws. We are aware that the whole entire world is flawed because it was flawed since Adam. So you're not telling us that's not insight.
Right.
Okay. That is not insight that is valuable to the conversation, because we don't believe that the justice system is perfect. Right. We believe that it is a system that is the best one created on this side of heaven since time immemorial. So
hold on. Ryan, is that that's Mr. Immigration? Is that the Ryan? Is that him?
I don't remember. It might be
Mr. Kind to the Stranger. But yeah,
I don't remember.
Okay, yeah.
But we're gonna get up out of here. We'll be back on Friday.
You're right. Our justice system is screwed up because we got 10, 11, 12-time felons out on the street.
Hello. Do you really think, as conservatives, we think our justice system is just
you got catch and release.
Okay.
In the front door, out the back door. You got plea bars.
Illegal immigration. You got judges up there letting people out the back door. Illegals. You think we think our justice system is perfect?
Violent felons getting a slap on the wrist due to prison overcrowding. Build more prisons. They don't want to do that though, because our prison population is too large. What kind of society incarcerates so many people?
Lord, I gotta go. Lord have mercy. The children is having trouble. All right, you guys. I love you guys for watching. Chuck, thank you for being here. I'll see you later.
Yes, sir. What's up, Antonio?
It's Victoria.
Oh, that's Victoria. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys for being here. We watch Dog Catcher Carmen, Karen, Megan, DT, everybody. That's Machow. Y'all see Machow's hand? Paul and who else? Gerg's band and everybody. Thank you guys so much for your support. I'll be back on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for watching.